What's up, guys? Welcome to Sigma Spirit. This is Alex, and I want to talk to you today about RickPill Philosophy. RickPill Philosophy comes to you from Rick and Morty, and this is a concept that I came up with recently, this RickPill Philosophy, based off of the RedPill philosophy. And it's a philosophy that I've noticed that really embodies Rick Sanchez, and I think it lends itself very well to being a Sigma male. And I think there are a lot of similarities, and I got to really think about what RickPill philosophy means. And as the inventor of RickPill philosophy, as a Sigma spirit philosopher himself, I took the time to think about what it means and also really look at what Rick Sanchez is. In many ways, Rick Sanchez is a Sigma male. And even though his Sigma male being is a little darker, it's a little more destructive than most people. But in this video, I want to talk about the 5 times that Rick Sanchez really went full Sigma male and why that means that he's living in this sort of RickPill philosophy himself. And then I'm going to talk about what people really get wrong about Rick Sanchez and what they hold contradictory beliefs about. Because Rick Sanchez is a very interesting character, and he's part of the reason why we love the show, Rick and Morty, one of my favorite shows. But he is complex. He's complicated, much like many Sigma males. So there's some things that people get wrong about Rick Sanchez and also this idea of RickPill philosophy. So I'll get into it about the quote, the number one quote that really got me thinking about why Rick Sanchez is a Sigma male. And I heard it and it just struck me so hard. It's in the recent season where he goes, "Your boos mean nothing to me. I've seen what makes you cheer." And that just floored me when I heard him say that, because it just sums up society right now. It sums up everything happening right now. And without getting too political, I just want you to think about what it means to be a Sigma male. Independent, self-reliant, thinking for yourself, being alone, introverted. All of that comes with a certain unique way you look at the world. And also a unique way in which you experience pleasure and experience pain. So when he says that I know what makes you cheer, I just think of people nowadays. Everyone's got opinions. Everyone thinks that they are entitled to an opinion. Everyone thinks that they're entitled to express a negative emotion and that their opinion is important, and everybody's writing reviews and tweeting and different things like that. And yet, none of it really matters, because when you look at most people who are writing these things, as Sigma males, I think we look at them and we understand on a deep level. And this is something that Rick Sanchez understands as well. I've seen what makes you cheer. I've seen what makes you excited. I've seen what really makes you tick. And for many people right now, it's not a lot. It's very simple. People are very simple. And a lot of people, even in the age of information, and we were supposed to move out of this age of ignorance and sort of enter the age of light, and everyone was supposed to know more and understand more and be more intelligent. I do not believe that we've entered a sort of age of enlightenment as people think that we have. And so when Rick Sanchez says that, I really think about people today. Everybody wants to boo, but their boos don't really matter, because we know what makes them excited, and it's so simple, and most of it's pretty dumb. And ultimately, their judgment of what's good is not really good. And so that lends itself to be their judgment of what's bad doesn't really hold credence either. So I love this quote from Rick Sanchez about ultimately what other people judge you on really doesn't matter. It's very Sigma male. The second time he went very Sigma male was when he was a pickle. And in this episode, he turns himself into a pickle. And I can't remember if he inadvertently does or he does so out of his own human error. But either one, he either does it on purpose or he does it because he made an error. And I think about Sigma males and Sigma male boredom and how Sigma males are intelligent people. Introverts can be very intelligent, and yet we get bored. Sometimes we figure people out. Life can be very easy sometimes. Social life can be kind of easy in ways. Now, being introvert has its own difficulties. But as an introvert who's also empathetic and knows a little bit about social dynamics, we can look at people and sort of understand the marionette strings that are masters of us all. And when we reach that level of awakening, it can push us to boredom. And when I think of that, I think of the internet troll. I think of like the alt-right conservative internet troll who sort of looks at the world from a place of what they think is awakening and feels a lot of boredom. Because in many ways it is. For anyone, you can look at people's behaviors, and we know a lot today about what drives people, how people are really just driven by animal impulse nowadays, even though we're so sophisticated and evolved. And you can understand that by the time you reach a certain age, you've kind of met all of the avatars that you're ever going to meet. And they all kind of fit into certain boxes. I know that's a simplification, but it's interesting to think about things like that. And so in this episode, I think that on some level he decides to turn himself into a pickle. And it's not ironic that he turns himself into a pickle. He gets into a pickle, gets himself into a pickle. And he spends the whole episode going from this lifeless pickle back into his human form. And in the end, he's sitting in therapy with his family, and he goes, I'm a scientist because I invent, transform, create, and destroy for a living. And when I don't like something about the world, I change it. And I think that is such a powerful thing for Sigma males to be guided by this sort of boredom that we all feel, and a discontent and a boredom. And right now, beyond the RickPill philosophy, if you look outside your window, watch the news, what does boredom and discontent look like for the average person? They're out there doing things that are harmful to others. They're out there protesting. They're out there starting arguments, getting in fights, or they're inside and they're on certain apps. They're using dopamine destroying apps. They're engaging in horrible habits. And if we don't use that Sigma male boredom, then it destroys us. And someone like Rick Sanchez, I think, is the perfect example of someone who uses that boredom, and he lets it fuel him into creating things, destroying things, and then creating new concepts, new solutions. And I love that. I love that about RickPill philosophy. It's like, I don't like something, so I change it. I destroy it, and then I change it. And I find that that's what Sigma males are, in my opinion. And I think the future really belongs to that Sigma male who's going to destroy the system that he doesn't like, whether that's how we socially connect. Facebook, an example of something that was created by an introvert. He wanted to make the world socialize and interact in a way that he thought was more conducive to how he saw the world. Facebook's not really for extroverts. And when you think about that, Mark Zuckerberg as kind of the poster boy for RickPill philosophy, maybe you won't like that. I don't really like that either, but he destroyed something. He destroyed how we interact as humans, and he created a new way. And while I don't think that what he did was necessarily great for society, it certainly gained him a lot. So the third time that we see Rick Sanchez go full Sigma is when he says, to live is to risk it all. Otherwise, you're just an inert chunk of randomly assembled molecules drifting wherever the universe blows you. And I think that that defines how a Sigma male really sees the world during a certain phase of their life. During that phase of life when they're wondering, what's the point of it all? And I'm going to cover that in the next point. What's the point? But for now, I just want you to think about how ultimately the Sigma male has to make a choice. And that choice is to live. And that's to risk it all. To sort of go down a path and say, I don't know the point, but I'm just going to do it. And I'm going to live. And that is to risk it all. Otherwise, you lack one thing, which I think is very important for Sigma males. And Rick Sanchez has found his purpose. And that is the thing I think a lot of Sigma males are lacking. And so if we want to add purpose to the RickPill philosophy, I think that that shows up in Sigma males and Rick Sanchez. It's a nice overlap there. The need for purpose. Otherwise, you're just an inert chunk of randomly assembled molecules drifting wherever the universe blows you. And when we think of life as an intellectual, if you're a Sigma male, you have some intelligence to you. You might have thought about life in these crazy ways. We're just this body of flesh. Or maybe you think of life as a dream, like, oh, it's just a dream anyway. And none of it really makes sense. So moving on to my next point after this one thing to tell you. Rick chooses to live. Rick chooses to live, and that's what makes his RickPill philosophy interesting. He decides, I'm not just going to be a lazy bum and sit here and stress over the fact that I'm just living this weird life as a set of molecules all assembled together. So in the show, we constantly see Rick's penchant for absurdism. And the previous quote tells us that, to live is to risk it all. Otherwise, you're this pointless being. So I think the fourth pillar of the RickPill philosophy, fourth time that Rick has really gone Sigma male, is this recurring theme of absurdism. And you don't see this through Rick in this quote, because actually it's Morty who says this. Because after a time, you notice that Rick really rubs off on Morty. And the quote is from Morty to his sister. He goes, "Nobody exists on purpose. Nobody belongs anywhere. Everybody is going to die. Now come watch TV." And he says that, and it's really funny. But you really notice that Morty has started to sound like Rick. He sort of has this idea of absurdist philosophy within him. And so what is absurdism? Without going too deep into this, absurdism is basically a philosophy by the French philosopher Albert Camus, in which humans struggle to find happiness and meaning through happiness, and yet most of us rarely find any meaning in our life. We don't have meaning in our life. And this is the ethos of absurdism, that life is absurd. Life is this sort of absurd, meaningless dream. And I don't want to push you either way. I don't want to say that one is right and one is wrong. I think that every Sigma male goes through the process. He's either spending his childhood in this moment, or he comes to a crossroads, maybe when he's older. Maybe he tries psychedelic drugs and he spends a couple years wondering, what's the point of it all? Or maybe he reads a text like from Jed McKenna. I know that sort of inspired my own absurdist philosophy. But every Sigma male usually goes through that process of wondering, what's the point? This just seems like an absurd dream. But I don't think it's one that you have to stay in. So there are problems if you do believe that life is an absurd dream or an absurd existence and that there's no meaning. Obviously, there are problems with that. The point of life is to create your own philosophy and live it as well as you can. And I'm not taking that away from you. But if you're in this absurdist stage, I think it's okay and it's normal. I've been through an absurdist stage, and part of me still thinks that life is an absurd dream. But it's what I do with that philosophy that sets me free. And I think that's important for you, to know that you can live in this absurd philosophy, this absurd moment in time, like the reality, the emotional reality that Rick Sanchez lives by. Life is meaningless, but that means that it can set you free. And I thought about this a lot when I was reading Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning. And in many ways, that book just kind of fell flat on me. And a lot of people told me, "Oh, it's such a great book. It's gonna blow your mind. It's so powerful to know that, we need meaning in life, and man needs a meaning to live and be happy." And maybe I'm in a phase right now in my life that I just don't understand that, or maybe I think it's stupid, or maybe it just seems so obvious to me because I do have meaning. I do have a purpose, and a book didn't have to tell me that. But when I think about the idea of this myth of Sisyphus by Albert Camus, the book that talks about absurdist philosophy, where he says basically the reality that Sisyphus, the guy who's punished to push the rock up the hill, that reality is pointless, is actually all of our lives, that all of our lives are pointless and meaningless. And then you contrast that with Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning, which is like the whole point of life is to find a point. It's very interesting to think about how those two are very contrasting. And I'm going to screw you up here and say that actually both of those concepts are very much part of Sigma male, Sigma spirit. On one hand, you have the absurdism. There's no point. And then on the other hand, you have men need purpose. And that's something I talk about all the time. And a lot of us men have talked about this. I'm not the person who invented the idea of purpose. This has been given to me. This concept of purpose was probably 20 years old in my mind by now. But you don't understand that until years later when things start to click. And so I love watching the absurdist philosophy in Rick and Morty. And I just want to say that you might be at the door right now of absurdism. And certainly Rick Sanchez is stuck in that phase. Rick Sanchez isn't a very happy person. But I think that ultimately Sigma males go through 3 stages on their journey. First stage, you're asleep. Second stage, you're awake, but you don't know what the point is. And everything feels kind of crazy, weird. You don't understand it. And many of you will get stuck there. And I'm in the process of leaving that second stage and entering that phase that I ultimately want to be in, the third phase of being awake, but sort of deciding how you want to go back to sleep, deciding how you want to put maybe a partial blindfold over your eye and go back into ignorance a little bit and sort of accept that, yeah, life is meaningless. Let that liberate me. And in that book, Myth of Sisyphus, he talks about how there's certain archetypes that really epitomize this absurdism of life. You have the warrior. I think he talks about the warrior, how the warrior basically lives an absurd life. He's dedicated himself to these ancient rituals of warfare and combat and warrior codes and things like that. And you see that today still, although military is very much bureaucratic now, and the actual warfare that you experience in the military is a lot different from if you were a Viking or a Persian or something like that thousands of years ago. And then you have the lover he talks about in that book, how these like Casanovas are living this absurd reality in which life is about pursuits, sexual pursuits of pleasure, hedonism, things like that. And I think that that's the point of what he talks about with this philosophy, is that you can be mad, you can hide the absurdism in religion and give it some meaning there, which Camus says is pointless. He also says you can commit suicide, but he says that is also pointless, which I would agree with. And then there's the third part. You can sort of let it liberate you, let it develop this archetype within you, and you pick the archetype and You choose how you want to live this absurd life and stop following these rules that people set up. And to me, that's being a Sigma male. So I think Camus would understand that Sigma male absurdist philosophy, they really go hand in hand at times, not all the time, because ultimately you have to move to a place of going all in on a purpose. But perhaps Camus would include the Sigma male as one of the archetypes. And the last part is Rick's thoughts about traditional education. And it's a quote he says to Jerry, who's his son-in-law. And Jerry asks him, what's your thought about, what do you think of school then, Rick? And Jerry sort of represents the anti-Sigma male to me. He represents this sort of doing things for others' approval, doing things to make people happy, sort of being weak. He's got no spine. And a lot of the cool character arc about Jerry is that he takes these great evolutions throughout the show, in which he, maybe in one episode, he goes from being this completely spineless, useless man into actually having some purpose. And it's kind of gratifying to watch that. But in this scene, he's sort of antagonizing Rick, and he asks, what's your thought about school? And Rick goes, I'll tell you how I feel about school, Jerry. It's a waste of time. Bunch of people running around, bumping into each other. Got a guy up front, says 2 + 2, and the people in the back say 4. Then the bell rings, and they give you a carton of milk and a piece of paper that says you can go take a dump or something. I mean, it's not a place for smart people, Jerry. I know that's not a popular opinion, but that's just my 2 cents. So, to me, that's just the epitome of what a Sigma male would say. Someone who's so anti-mainstream, doesn't understand why we have this system. System is designed to create this hierarchy. We hate that hierarchy. We want to break that hierarchy. School is for that hierarchy. And to me, it's just anti-mainstream. RickPill Philosophy, very anti-mainstream. Very much for that loner. RickPill Philosophy is for the individual, not the groupthink. And when I think of my own life, maybe this is laziness. Maybe I'm not actually smart. I think it's called the Dunning-Kruger effect. And I could be wrong. I could be showing the Dunning-Kruger effect just by thinking I have a quote here. But I think that the Dunning-Kruger effect is when people think that they are more intelligent than they are, and smart people think that they're not as smart as they are. So for me personally, as a smart person, and I use smarts in quotation because I want to push the idea that there are many different kinds of smarts, and certain types of smarts don't fit up in certain schooling styles of education. So my smart didn't match up with school smart, American smart, university smart in 2020. I almost failed out of university, and I almost dropped out of university because I didn't like it. So the thoughts about traditional education in Rick and Morty are so funny to me because they just epitomize exactly what a Sigma male would say. And I think, of course, Rick represents Sigma males in many ways, but we also see that he's not. But first, we can look at his traits. We've got his independence, his self-reliance. He does everything for himself. He's intelligent. He's a little mysterious. He's got many pasts, and he never lets people underneath his skin. He never lets people know what's under his sleeve. He's super capable, and he's also very confident in what he can do as a scientist. And then I think there are funny ways that the show Rick and Morty shows that he is a Sigma male, or an introvert at least. We've got the episode where he's a shy pooper, where he can't poop in front of people. He's a little shy. And then we've got the one where he just does what he wants. He does whatever the hell he wants on this planet, Gazorpazorp. And this is the planet that's dominated by females. And it's a hilarious episode because it shows a very interesting reality in which the women run this planet, and the men are these beasts on this planet. And so Rick is sort of a slave on this planet, and he just rips a massive fart on the planet. He just does what he wants. He's a renegade. And also we have him going to prison many times, and this sort of federation that makes the rules. They're always chasing him, and they always want him because he's this renegade scientist, incredibly brilliant, but he never follows the rules. But I think that there's a difference between RickPill philosophy and Sigma male philosophy. And one of those is the idea that I talked about, this idea of absurdity and the absurdity of life, and how inevitably the Sigma male goes from absurdity or being asleep to absurdity back to sort of finding a purpose and waking up and then kind of closing their eyes a little and accepting certain things so that they can operate and be happy and not spend their whole life going insane. You know, there's a lot to worry about. There's a lot to be angry about. There's a lot to lose sleep over. And if you're a Sigma male, it can be incredibly difficult because you have a sensitivity to you. And I think that that is actually the next part that I would critique about RickPill philosophy versus Sigma male philosophy. And that's sensitivity. Rick is not a sensitive person. He's introverted, but he's very cold. He's very callous. He's not a person who can read other people's emotions very well. He's not empathetic. He's, in fact, almost a little sociopathic in a way. He can kill very easily. He never thinks about death in the way that most people do. He's constantly telling Morty to just not think about death. Don't think about it. Just keep moving. And so I think that's one of the differences. And I also think that my philosophy of Sigma spirit, taking Sigma male beyond just personality traits, but sort of a philosophy to it, is that the Sigma spirit chooses to use powers for greater good. He might do that in an individual way, but he decides to help others, and whether that's just helping one-on-one, helping one person, or doing something like what I'm doing, helping other Sigma males on a broader scale. So I think that RickPill is a little more out for yourself. And we see that from Rick Sanchez. He's constantly being called selfish. So why is he so confusing yet so popular? Because I think a lot of people who watch Rick Sanchez idolize him. Yet if you asked those people, should people be selfish? Should people be individuals? They would say no. So this creates a lot of confusion. And it is a very confusing part of 2020. And I don't know the solution, and I don't know truly what's happening. But there's this disconnect between what we idolize. We idolize people who are independent, individual, out for themselves, complete freedom in who they are and what they do. And yet some of our philosophies are all about the collective. So I don't know. It's a very interesting time, and there's a lot of incongruence in people. So I'd love to hear your thoughts about other times that you noticed Rick Sanchez was Sigma male, what you think about him being Sigma male, and let me know what you think. I'd love to hear your comments and all that stuff about this concept. Also, let me know if you want me to analyze any other characters, movie characters, TV characters, and I will, if enough people ask about them. So I hope you enjoyed this dive into the RickPill philosophy, and if you're new here and you're not sure what a Sigma male is, maybe you came here because you like Rick and Morty, well, you might be a Sigma male, so check out our content and learn for yourself. Thanks for watching.